Welcome to Assistive Technology All Around You. My name is Jeannette van Houten. I'm from Assistive Technology Consulting in New Jersey. Today we're going to talk about ways that we can implement assistive technology with things that are in our everyday environment, things that you use one way for a task, and maybe now we can look at it how we can use it in a different way. So today, our learning objectives are learning the definition of assistive technology, identify things in your home that can be used as AT, identify built-in support in the operating system or on an iPad, and be able to look at resources and share with others resources that we've talked about in the presentation. And there will be a resource of additional resources that you can use for online, because I didn't want to spend like 20 minutes on one resource. So I'm going to give you a bunch of resources with a description as a handout. Assistive technology at its core is any item, piece of equipment, software, or product that increases, maintains, or improves the functionality of an individual. So anything that can make someone more independent than they were previously. So it's any item. So that's why it's assistive technology around you. It doesn't matter if it's Post-it notes, wiki sticks, a pipe cleaner, and bells. These are things that we have all around us and can improve the ability of a student or your child working at home on doing a task. So where to look? So for me, the first places I looked was in my nephew's toy chest, right? Then I looked in the junk drawer. Everybody has one. Some of us have 2 or 3. I looked in the toolkit. I looked in the arts and crafts bins. I looked in my office supplies, and believe it or not, I even looked in the beauty supplies. So these are places that you can look at that are just in your home environment. So what today's presentation really is about is that you're going to look at something one way and then switch it over to use it another way. So the first area that we're going to talk about is reading. A lot of our students struggle with a cluttered page, decoding, comprehension, defining words, right? And oftentimes when we look at assistive technology for reading, you often head to the end of the continuum, which is the high-end tools where the computer is reading, right? But sometimes our students don't want the computer reading to them. They want to be able to be a hands-on reader like everyone else. They want the pen and paper, they want the worksheet in front of them. But how do we make it accessible, especially at home? We don't have the photocopier room that we can go to. We necessarily don't have a scanner that we can put a piece of paper on and declutter it. We don't have the specialized software necessarily. So when we're at home, what can we do to make reading a little bit easier? So when we look at a student's page, there's a lot of text on a page, and we have to figure out how to declutter the page. So oftentimes we look at, can we highlight a word? So do you have a highlighter? Now, I don't have a tendency to like to draw on a page if it's textbook or a reading book. So they have erasable highlighters. Wiki sticks. Wiki sticks are things that you see over here where there's a yellow one and a red one, and they're bendable. It's literally a waxy stick. There's page blockers, such as the one that you see down here, right? There's line readers, which are very similar to this, except for it's just a line. A ruler works, an index card works, a sign here flag works, Post-it notes work, right? So these are all ways that we can change the way a student is looking at a page. So when I do a reading activity, typically I will have the student go through the text, and I may give them the purpose of reading. I want you to point to all the weather words. I want you to circle all the action words. I may say, find the words that end in ED, because what I'm asking them to do is just pay attention to one specific piece of the text versus the whole entire text. When I do a page blocker is literally you're only highlighting the piece you want them to look at. You're covering up the picture. You might be covering up other text. And this has the student then focus directly on the text that we're asking them to focus on, right? A line reader is typically a little piece of cardboard with a colored gel in between. I can tell you I found mine at the dollar store. But if you wanted to make it, We just passed Easter. You probably had color cellophane. That is a way that you can make a line reader in different colors, right? So when we look at the visual attention of a page for a student, all we're trying to do is decrease the visual area of attention and bring it to one specific area. So strategies for reading. So when we look at strategies for reading, when we're at home, on YouTube, or even movies on the TV, you can turn on closed caption. Now, for some students, passive seeing of text of their favorite cartoon will allow them to identify words in text. And all of a sudden, they're starting to get interested more in the text than what the picture is, the screen or the action on the screen. They'll start paying attention to the words and they'll start pointing to the words. For you as a parent, you can take one of the stories, maybe Brown Bear, which is a repetitive line, but you can get it on YouTube. You download it, you turn on the closed caption, and you can point to the word. And what you'll notice is that after a while, your child may point to the word. And then if you wanted to make your own activity, majority of people have access to Google Slides or PowerPoint. You can create your own Brown Bear of things in your neighborhood. And you would change Brown Bear to your child's name. So like my nephew's name is Ryan. Ryan, what do you see? Right? And he would identify something. I might take a picture of it, and then I make a personalized PowerPoint and book that they can have that's their own personal text. You can enlarge text on the computer or on a worksheet. So if you have a printer that has a scanner, which I know not everybody does, but you can also use your cell phone and you can send it to your computer and you can enlarge the photo so that the picture is larger. You can declutter text. So when a teacher sends you a worksheet, you can fold the worksheet into 4s and you can have your child work on only one piece at a time. My favorite thing to do with text that may be coming in through Google Classroom is that instead of having a paragraph, I'll put things in bullet form. For some students, a paragraph is way too much information to be looking at one time. So when you put it in bullets, they're only seeing one line at a time. And it allows them to feel success because they've gotten through one sentence. And then they got through the second sentence. On the next slide, I might put 2 sentences together under one bullet and then 2 more under another. And then on the third slide, I might put it back to a paragraph, because what you're trying to work for is to allow them to have success at an individual line, then 2 lines, then full text, right? The self-read phone, right? So the one here that you see in the picture here, all it is a piece of PVC, and it's a straight piece of PVC and 2 side pieces. So like they're the elbows. And when you talk into it, it echoes back into your ear so that you can hear what you're saying. So for some individuals, that allows them to hear how they're reading, if they're reading too fast, if they're not reading fast enough, how they pronounce a word, things like that. And children like this. I even have some middle school age students that like to hear this because it reinforces the auditory of them hearing what they've just practiced. Or if they're studying for a test, it allows it another method to get into their sensory system. So we're going to have a show and tell of different ways to adapt materials with reading. During this, I'm going to show you 5 different ways that you can modify text and different tools that you can use that are from your home.
Here's a beginner reader, and this is Biscuit. For some of our individuals that are using symbol support for learning to read, one of the important things you need to remember is that not every single word should be symbol supported. Words that are Dolch words, sight words, should not have a symbol. You want to highlight the important piece of the sentence or the whole content of that page. So with Biscuit, so the lines are, this is Biscuit, Biscuit is small, Biscuit is yellow, right? So I went on to Google Images, and this is a picture of Biscuit. Biscuit is small. I grabbed an image from Boardmaker that is the symbol of small, and biscuit is yellow. And then I grabbed the symbol for yellow from Boardmaker. Now you don't need Boardmaker to do this. Again, I got this image from Google Images. If you you can create something that's big and small within Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, yellow, anything that's yellow, so that you can highlight it, right? So one of the things you can do when you're trying to emphasize these words is match them up. Now, typically when I do this, I'll put the symbol underneath or above, but because these words are so close together, I had to make it go off onto the side. So sometimes during reading, you want to change the purpose of reading. So sometimes I'll give the individual that I'm working with a silly sound for a specific word. So for this activity, I found a button at Staples. It makes a silly sound, right? They have a whole bunch of different sounds that you can make. This one just has the boing sound, right? And then at the dollar store, I found my clappers, right? So the word that I'm going to pick is biscuit, right? So every time the child hears biscuit, they would press their switch. So this is small, is yellow, right? Typically in class, we would have maybe a Big Mac talking button that would allow us to program a specific message that says, this is biscuit. Biscuit is small. Biscuit is yellow, right? But a lot of students didn't go home with their voice output devices, especially single message buttons, right? And the same concept goes for our little clapper. Every time they hear biscuit, they could clap for biscuit. The reason you do that is to have them focus in on a specific word. So that's going to be like the word of the day. And it helps bring visual attention to it. It brings auditory attention to it. So when I say it, they make a noise. And I can track how many times they interact with the story. It's just a fun way to change up a story. It's like taking brown bear, and changing to a child's name or changing the things that they have to look for. So the first adaptation that I'm going to teach you is how to make page flippers for individuals that struggle with turning the page, right? So this is a book that I bought at the dollar store, right? And we've got different tools that we can use. I'm going to be using little clothespins. You can use regular size clothespins. I'm going to use Post-it notes, and we can use, these are just popsicle sticks, right? So for the paper, not the paper clips, for the clothespins, all you do is open the book, clip the pin, and stagger them down the pages. So for an individual that struggles with turning a page, now they can do it with much more ease, right? If they've come off, you can tape them. So I do this with books that I necessarily don't own, but if you own the book, you can put a little glue on it and have it held, right? So here's another book, right? This is Olivia Big, right? And we're going to do popsicle sticks, right? And all you're going to do is tape it on, right? Tape another one on, right? And this is just a fast way to give your child access to turning pages of books, right? Doesn't require a lot. They can get their finger under. and just pull, right? Now, the other one, right, is Post-it notes. Okay, so I'm going to just pop these off for a second, right? Post-it notes are fantastic. We typically have them in our home, and you can make them smaller, just rip them, right? And do the same exact concept. If an individual needs more depth so that there's a difference, I definitely recommend the clothespins because it gives a little bit of a gap. But you can also use binder clips, and that gives even more. It makes it a little bit heavier so that when they're turning the page, they can actually feel it. But those are fast ways that you can create a book modification so that your child can turn the pages independently. Now, this is more of a functional test within literacy. We often ask that our students or our children understand street signs, right? This is something that I picked up at the dollar store. Usually it's a travel bingo. It comes with 2 boards. You can make this in PowerPoint. You can make this in Excel. You can make this in Microsoft Word, right? So when we go out for a walk or we're driving around, we might look for these street signs. So there's always a stop sign, right? And we have them mark off the free, right? We stopped at a stoplight. We saw a walking sign. Oh, we saw a railroad sign. We saw a yield sign. Now, necessarily, will they get bingo within your community? Not really. However, you can say, how many signs did we get? So then not only are you incorporating literacy, but you're also incorporating math. And since this is erasable, it can be reused over and over again. If you can cut these up and make them Velcro pieces so that they can Velcro things on so it's easier when you're walking around. Or they can just rip it off and hand it to you, that they knew that one. But there's multiple ways that you can use this type of board within the community. I know when it's raining out, I took these little things and I played cars with my nephew. And I took popsicle sticks, and I put them on, and we put Play-Doh down, and we created little street signs on our play mat. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can do with practicing environmental sight words within functional tasks. Here's another book I have, Pete the Cat. Kids love Pete the Cat. And when you're looking at text that has a little bit more to the page, maybe 2 lines, as the book goes on, it may have 3 lines, and you want to start blocking text for your child, you can use a line reader. Now, I purchased these at the dollar store, right? They come in yellow and they come out blue. Now, for some individuals with dyslexia, they benefit from this because it helps the movement of the words moving. It stops that. And for some kids, it just shows them exactly where they need to be reading. But these were bought at the dollar store, right? You could make these from, if you have the shrink wrap or the basket wraps that come in all different colors, especially around spring and Easter. All it is a piece of cardboard and the plastic inside. You can even go to Staples and get file folders that are different colors. The other thing that you can do is something like this, right? This is the total block of anything other than the text on the page. So we have a box down here. I can also use my line ruler to block and highlight the text that we're asking them to read. There's a whole bunch of things. All this is a piece of cardboard that I had that came in from a shipment, and I folded it. It fit in the book perfectly, and it allows me to block out the image because I want them to focus on the text. This is a great way. You don't have to keep it whole. You can split it. You can put plastic behind this to make it more visual attention to your child. So these are two other things that I found at the dollar store. This is the Dolch words, right? These are sight words. They're flashcards. Some of the things that I do with something like this, one I'm working with literacy, is that we'll make an activity on the computer and we'll have them match the word here. I'll see if they can find the word and in their communication system. I might create a scavenger hunt around the house looking for specific Dolch words, sight words that make sense, right? These are additional sight words that you can buy at the dollar store. Now, do you have to buy things? No. PowerPoint, index cards, Post-it notes, like all these things can be used to enhance literacy. And it goes into writing. The more an individual sees a word, the more likelihood they'll know how to spell the word. If it's a language-enriched environment, the more likelihood there'll be increased competency in literacy. So if you make an engineered environment around language, then you have a more likelihood of having an individual that has increased literacy.
So let's talk about writing. I know this is an area that's really hard for a lot of kids. Myself, I struggle with writing. I'm more of a grammar girl. I butcher grammar like a butcher butchers a steak. So writing, I know, is a struggle. So when we look at writing, oftentimes we're going to be looking at rate and expression, holding the pencil, grammar, and just overall the ability to get a sentence out. So some of the writing supports that we have are dry erase markers. This is great for students that really struggle with getting the ideas down from their head onto the paper. They're not sure how to spell, they're afraid of spelling, they can get a couple of words down. So a dry erase marker and board is great for brainstorming. It's great for students to practice spelling. It's great for putting a sentence back in structure, because when you put it down on paper and you have to erase it or you're typing it and you have to keep backing up, oftentimes it's frustrating to students and they get stuck in that constant write, repair, write, repair, write, repair. With a dry erase, the student can just remove that one single word, or a teacher can put down the side, like here's 3 other words that might be able to be used with that word you're trying to correct. Pencil grips. There are 1,001 different types of pencil grips. Pencil grips are hit or miss with students. Some don't like the feel of them. Some just use them to play more than they use for writing. Some complain that it's too much on their hand. What I found is that if I use a modeling clay, I can make a custom pencil grip right for that student. Modeling clay, we all have it in our home. Play-Doh, eventually, if you leave it out long enough, it will dry hard as a rock. Slant boards are used often for students for writing, right? It helps get their hand into right position. It drops the elbow, puts the wrist up. But when we look at the fact that students were in school one day and they're out the next, and not everything was sent home, where are we getting a slant board from? There's 4 or 5 different ways you can make a slant board with things in your home. So I love using binders. I've been known to take one of the Amazon shipping boxes and make my own slant board that way. Weighted pencils is really great for some kids that need that sensory input into their hand. And you're like, well, where do I get a weighted pencil from? My best friend is the toolkit. I guarantee you, if you have a significant other or you have your own toolkit like I have, you have nuts and washers right inside the toolkit. And you just find ones that slide right over the pencil, right? And you get it to the weight that feels best to the child. So typically 2 or 3 washers up towards where the eraser is will allow them to have some weight into the back of the hand. If they need it down at the tip, the bolts work best. And then you just tape them up and give it a stop area. And that allows them to have a placement for their hand and give some nice input into the hand. Stickers, like I love stickers, because what you can do is you take the shipping labels or the envelope labels, that the Avery labels, you can either type the words that the individual needs to put on the worksheet. Instead of worrying about, does this word fit on the line? All you do is peel the sticker and put it on. We don't have to worry about spelling. We don't have to worry about copying material. Their whole task is fill in the blank. Because when we look at writing, we have to really evaluate what is the purpose of the writing task. So if it's a fill-in worksheet and the student needs to fill in the worksheet, are we worried about spelling? Or are we worried that they've picked the right word? So stickers are a great way to do that. Numbering the answers and having the student put the number on the line that represent, having them draw a line is even another option. So there's a lot of different supports that we can do for writing. It just depends on, again, what is the focus of the writing task. So show and tell, I'm going to show you different ways that I've modified writing with using tools that we already have at home. So this will include things that I've found in my home environment. These are maybe some of the things that I've bought at the Dollar Tree. And we're going to show you some electronic ways to support writing.
So for writing, there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do for writing. Right now, we're going to talk about how to make a customized pencil grip. Oftentimes, I'll use Model Magic, but being that we're in lockdown and Michael's Crafts and the craft stores are closed, the best thing I had available to me was Play-Doh from the dollar store. Right? So all you do is you take a piece of Play-Doh, right? Small piece, and you kind of roll it. Then you take your pencil and you push it through, and then you allow your child to hold the pencil the way they normally do, right? As you can see, there's my pencil grip. There's a finger there, there's a finger there, there's a finger there, right? And you allow it to dry. Play-Doh, we all know, dries. I'm sure we've all scraped it off our rugs. And this is one way that you can make a customized pencil grip. Again, I love Model Magic because it dries fairly quickly. This is going to take, with Play-Doh, it usually takes a day. You can put it in the oven at a low temperature and bake it. That's a possibility. The other thing is, when we're looking at writing, oftentimes we'll end up giving students a big tool, a standard size pencil, or a standard size pen, right? If you notice that sometimes they come home with much smaller instruments that you sent them with. They've sharpened it and kept sharpening and kept sharpening it. It's not necessarily that they're looking for the point. What they're trying to do is make the pen or pencil small enough to fit into their hand so that they don't have this big wheelie thing hanging out the back that they can't control. So sometimes golf pencils work wonders because it's small and it fits in the hand. So that's a great option. You can buy, I want to say, like 100 of them at Staples for maybe $5. They're a great thing to have. Now, for some students, right, they need a little bit more help with holding a pencil, right? So here are my, here's a set of hair ties, right? So all I'm going to do is loop them together, right? One piece goes on their wrist, the other, whoop, right? So then the other piece goes across, and this helps the student get sensory input from the rubber band. As they move the pen, this tightens and loosens, but it also keeps their hand in position for writing. Now, this is just hair ties that I bought at the dollar store. And when you're writing with it, it just forces you to keep the pen in a position, right? So all you're doing is, you can see that the pen moves with me, but it gives a little feedback for sensory input. All you want to do is make sure that the rubber bands are not very tight around the wrist, because you don't want like the rubber band biting in. Sometimes you can use the loops for, do you remember when we were kids we'd make those pot holders? Those loops are fantastic for doing this type of activity. So now we're going to talk about wiki sticks and writing. So I use wiki sticks in different ways. One of the ways is that I give students a starting and stopping point, right? So I'll find typically wiki sticks that have a green and a reddish color. Mine happens to be pink, right? And all you do is take it, put it across the line, press it down, and now the student or your child will know where their boundaries are, right? Where they have to stay within the line, right? So they can't really push past it for writing. They can move it if they push really hard, but this allows them to have those boundaries, and then they can be peeled off and then moved again. Or you can do a whole page. Sometimes what I'll do is put the wiki sticks down, and then I'll photocopy the paper, because then I have dark, heavy lines that the child can follow through on, right? Another one is using Elmer's glue, right? So with Elmer's glue, all I did was go across the lines, right? I gave 2 line spaces, right? And what this does, it gives a harder stop. So you can't go under it unless you pick up your pen to go underneath. You really can't do it. And that's a nice way. Elmer's glue, you can do a ton of these at a time, right? And depending on the ink, it may run. Sometimes I'll actually purposely put marker underneath, then put the glue underneath, so that I do get this heavier, darker line for them. Another way is that you can create lined paper for them. And all this is me taking a marker, drawing a straight line, then taking another marker and just making dots or dashes across the page. Now you can download from Microsoft Word or even from the internet pages that allow you to have pre-made paper. You just research dotted line paper, primer paper, dark line paper, and then then you download it, print it, and you always have it. So this allows you to practice writing with going and staying under and over the line. Now my other favorite thing is using something like this. I got this at the dollar store, and all it is a folder that you can put paper into, right? You just slide it in, right? And this is great for individuals that are practicing how to write, right? So they might be practicing the letter B, right? And they're going to do an uppercase B. They might be doing circles. They might be doing squares. That's a really bad square. I need some OT, right? Right? And what's nice about this is that then you can just erase it and start again, right? I do this with coloring pages. I'll put a coloring page in here, and I'll give wipe off markers so that they can color it. I'll photocopy it, or maybe I'll take a picture of it with my phone just to document it, and then we'll wipe it off. The students really like that because then they can get to redo it, and then what I end up doing is taking the photo and putting it in a PowerPoint and having kind of like making a flip book out of it so that they're seeing their artwork come to life. Now this is your standard wipe-off board and 2 lines with a dotted line. I purchased this at the dollar store and it works just like any other wipe-off board. You can erase it. I will use this not only for writing, but I'll also use it for math. I'll turn it long ways so that now this becomes where my numbers go, so they all have a spot to go so that there's no misalignment, and then the student can answer their questions. I will typically take a photo of this so that I have documentation that the student used it for writing or for math, and then they can erase it. They can even use their handy little grip. The one underneath, it's just a plain old board, and I love these type of boards for students that just need to jot ideas down when they're writing. So if we were going to write about the beach, right? I might say sand, right? I might say shells. I may say birds, water, castle, right? So this allows them to jot down their ideas in ways that make sense for them, right? And then I might go, when we're writing, what 2 things go together? Well, sand and castles go together, right? And shells go together, right? Water may go with birds, right? Sometimes the birds are sitting in the water, right? But I might even put in here boat, and that's another thing, right? So this allows us to brainstorm, and as they write something, they can erase it so they know they used it and it doesn't have to get used again. Sometimes I have students leave all their words there until they're completely done, because we may use that word over again. So sometimes you have to wonder about which way is best for the student, right? Sometimes I'll even put stickers on this so that they can peel the sticker off and put it on their paper. It just depends on what type of activity we're working on. It's also great for math just because it's a wipe off. So if I was going to make a 10 frame, right? And I say that there are 9, can the student then show me 9, right? If I say we're going to take 2 away and how many's left, then I can erase them, right? It just makes sense to have, especially for writing and math, it makes sense to have a wipe-off board ready to go to show some form of manipulative. So you're probably wondering what curlers are doing here, right? I bought these at the dollar store, right? But they're great to make little grips on either toothbrushes or pens or even eating utensils. So what I did was, this is just a marker, right? I put the hair curler on, right? And what it does is it gives a little sensory input into the hand, right? So you can try to squeeze, but it wants you, it kind of like makes you resist. So you can make your letters and circles, and you're probably all wondering why I'm doing things backwards. I'm a lefty, so I have a tendency to do things backwards a little bit, right? And then here's the fork, right? Same concept. You can do this with anything that they're holding, and it slides off. So it could be washed. It could be thrown out. It's $1 for 10, I think. So it's a great way to make things accessible cheaply.
When working on the keyboard, some individuals need a way to visually be cued of where they're going to be typing. For visually impaired and blind, if you look at your keyboard, F and J already have little lines or a bump under it. This allows the visually impaired or blind person to know where their home row is and where those F and J keys, so that they can space their hands out properly. When we're looking at individuals with complex needs or learning disabilities, sometimes when they're learning the keyboard, they need a little bit more assistance. So you can go to the dollar store and buy these little stickers. They come in all different shapes. I have a tendency to stay with smaller ones, but you can go to the bigger ones like the hearts and the triangles and the squares if they work for your student or your child, right? And all you're going to do is decide where on the keyboard you're going to start. So if you're going to work on spelling their name, and we're just going to say the child's name is Fred. So you'd put an F, you'd put a sticker on an F, an R, and an E, and a D, right? This lets them know that these are the letters that they have to press. It doesn't tell them the sequence in which they can press. It just shows them that these are where the keys are, right? If you want to get a little bit more directive, right, you can split the keyboard into 4 distinctive colors. So start off with the Q, the A, the Z, the W, S, X, E, D, C, and you can put stickers of a specific color on those keys. So we'll just say those are the red keys. And then the R, the F, the V, the T, the G, the B, the Y, H, N, we're going to make those the blue keys. And then the next color, you would go U, J, M, I, K, O, L, P, and that'll be the green keys. The reason you do this is so that you can say, verbally cue the student, it's in the red keys, it's in the blue keys, it's in the green keys, right? This allows them to look at a smaller section of the keyboard and still work on the muscle memory. Remember, typing is strictly muscle memory. So they just need to learn where the keys are. They don't have to be perfect typists at first. Your hands don't fully develop until you're 21, so we don't really have a lot of control fully over them until then, and most keyboards are too big for little hands. And they do make keyboards specifically for little hands, but when we're looking at the keyboards that we have at home, they're standard size. So if a student is hunting and pecking, like using one finger at a time, that is okay. They can build up speed just as much as doing a 10-finger type. There are special stickers that you can purchase from Amazon that are color-coded. Same way that I did the stickers from the dollar store, you can purchase, they're probably about $20, that you can put on the keyboard. Math. Math typically is a rough assistive technology because when we look at math, there's not many things at the end continuum of math on the computer. There are some apps for the iPad, and there may be some extensions in Google, but in general, math is such a hard concept to complete on the computer because it requires additional steps, and it may not look like the way the child or student is being taught in class. So when we look at math supports, right, I love manipulatives. I love using real money. I love using fake money, counters, math lines, fraction bars, charts and study guides, process aids, and calculators. These are all fantastic tools to use for math. Math is a tangible thing. It's like if you can touch math, it makes much more sense than having something that's just very abstract. When you're teaching fractions, right? I love the fraction bar over here. It's color-coded and it's pieces that I can put into place. But fractions are all around us every day. We cook with fractions. When we eat pizza, it's a fraction. When we have a sandwich, do you want a whole sandwich? Do you want a half a sandwich? Do you want a quarter of a sandwich? Fractions are things that we can do constantly around us. Process aids. So process aids are, what are things that we can use to help someone remember the steps of math? Because once we get past the basic counting of things, then we have to add them. And then we have to subtract them, and then we multiply them, and we divide them. And as each math process happens, if we don't get the foundation from step 1 to step 5, the process is lost. So some students need kind of like that little study guide or cheat sheet, like I've done this step, check it off. I've done this step, check it off, so that they can go back and learn the steps of math. And eventually, once they get those steps down, they may leave the process aid by its side and not use it again. But it's kind of like that step-by-step guide that helps them. They have different calculators. They have talking calculators. They have big calculators. They have online calculators. There's probably 1,000 different types of calculators. And sometimes students do far better with a calculator than they do any other way. It's a very concrete, I put this number in, I put this sign in, I put that number in, and I hit the equal. It's just very simple for them. And as students get older, the calculator is an extremely powerful tool, especially when they're going out into the community and trying to figure out, do they have enough money to pay what they're looking for? And in that case, then the calculator is a great tool. They even have a money calculator so that you put in how much money is in your pocket, and then you can subtract what you're spending so that you know how much money either you should have left in your pocket or how much change you should be getting. So for math, we're going to do some show and tell with math. And I'm going to show you some of the manipulatives that I've created and things that I've had around my house to help with concrete of math. And again, I love math because it's such a kinesthetic activity. Right now, we're looking for activities that we can do outside. Math is such a great one because you can do a walking number line. You can play games. You can build your own board game outside, and you can roll the dice and have someone move. And there's so many different possibilities of that kinesthetic math activities that make it so much more meaningful to the individual. When you see that there's 3 + 2 = 5, They know what those numbers may mean, but they don't know what it feels like. So when you play a game outside, or if you even play a board game at home, it's a tangible way of seeing and feeling what's happening.
Math is such a wonderful topic to talk about because it's very kinesthetic. It's a activity that you can physically get involved in. There's moving of things, and everything around us becomes a manipulative. Buttons from the arts and crafts closet or from the sewing kit. Dice. Now these are big dice that I found at the dollar store. These are great for playing large board games outside. The building blocks that I stole from the toy chest. Markers and different colored pens become a way for us to work with math. Our popsicle sticks. Little containers that I found at the dollar store. Chalk, a wipe-off board, and real money, right? Everything becomes a manipulative, and everything can become physically involved, right? So if we're working on a math concept, right, and we're working on adding, right, I might take my bells out, little fuzzies, and say to the student, how many red bells, right? They may say 2 red bells. Plus, okay, so we know we have the 2 red bells. They're sorted, right? And then how many other bells do we have? Well, we have 3 other bells. And we might just say other bells, right? And the reason I write the words is because math is language. And if we give the students the language that they're looking for, word problems become less abstract and more concrete for them. They understand where the words come from, right? So they put them together, right? And then I might write the problem like this. 2 plus 3 equals, right? And then they can count them up. So there's 2 red, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5. I might even do math this way. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, give them the dots. And then they can count up the dots and have it come to 5. Then I might show them that 3 plus 2 equals 5, right? And still do the dots. What I love about using different color manipulatives in math, especially since we're trying to show that math has all different ways that we can add things, I might even do something like this with them. 2 red, 1 blue, 1 green, 1 silver, right? And put the plus signs in between and have them count up that way. So now they know that 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 5. They know 2 plus 3 equals 5. They know 3 plus 5, plus 2 equals 5. It's just a way of visually showing them different ways that math can happen, right? It's all the same problem, but showing them that there's different ways that we can represent that, right? So that's one way. Then I have another, right? So these are just popsicle sticks that I took stickers to, right? So there's 2 and there's 1, right? So I might do 2 plus 1 equals 3, and I might have them put out 3 popsicle sticks, or I might have them take 3 stickers off and put them on the popsicle stick, right? This is a tangible activity, just getting them to see that there's all different ways to show math, right? So then when I put this together, I can say 1, 2, 3, and does yours match? 1, 2, 3. It's just another way to represent math for them. Math with blocks. Now, what's fantastic about blocks is they're manipulatives, right? A lot of times students are working on counting 1 through 5, 1 through 10. They're using 10 frames, right? So with blocks, you can create 10 frames, right? So if I was giving the math problem 3, right? So I'm going to take the bottom 2 off, 1, 2, 3, right? And I was going to add, right, 3 more, right? What is 3 plus 3, right? So they can count them, pull them apart, they can put them together. It's a way that you're working on that sensory input. You can even go down the side, right, before you give them the math problem and say 4, 5, 6, right? So if they get stuck, you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're still not getting it, right? So then you can turn your blocks and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. We have 6 blocks, right? And then you go back to the next problem and you add your blocks back on, right? So that we can do the next math problem, right? So what is 5 plus 5? So they may need help again. So then you wipe that off and you go 6, 7, 8, 9, and I might leave this one off so that they can write 10. Manipulatives are a fantastic way for tangible, meaningful math, right? And with blocks, especially the big blocks that the young kids use, they're big enough that you can write on them. And if you use a dry erase, they just come right off, right? And they can be used multiple times. And you can even write words on it if you write small enough. But I love blocks for math manipulation. But you can use anything you have. So this is about using your standard wipe-off board and manipulatives, right? So I might use my popsicle sticks. I have little stickers on the bottom of it. You can use any stickers. You can use highly motivating stickers. So that now they have the equation in front of them. 1 plus 3 equals how many? And I might give multiple manipulatives of popsicle sticks, right? So that they have something tangible in their hands that they can use. So there's 1, and then this one is 3. And if we put them all together, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then they can circle the answer. They can erase the ones that aren't the answer. It just depends on the individual of what makes more sense. For some individuals, it makes sense to circle it. For others, it makes more sense to wipe it away or cross it off. You just have to play it by what makes sense to them the most.
So we're going to talk about built-in accessibility on the iPad and your computer. And this is going to be really different ways. When we look at built-in accessibility, so there's going to be a show and tell piece here so that I can show where to find the accessibility in the iPad. And then in Microsoft Word, I'll show you how to turn on accessibility within your Windows machine and show you some Google accessibility features. Internet-based supports. There is a ton of things on the internet that can support children's learning. And when you look at internet-based supports, you have to, again, the first thing you should ask yourself is, what am I trying to accomplish? What is the goal for my child at this task? So the first one we're going to talk about is reading. For me, when I look at internet-based reading supports, I'm looking at, can I get books that the teacher is reading in class? Can I find those resources online? So I might look at YouTube, because a lot of times the books are there and there's someone's reading it, or someone is typed them out on a PowerPoint so that you can read slide by slide. I'm looking at, is there built-in supports for those pages? Can you hear, is the text highlighting? Is it reading out loud? Can I change the pace? Can I change the background color? Those are some of the things that you're looking at for reading. The 6 resources that I have here that I find the most powerful, right, is United for Literacy. It has over 200 audiobooks and digital books that you can listen to and read. Oxford Owl from the UK. They have free books and they have paid resources. I love Epic. It's right now 30 days for free, and I think they just keep extending that until we're out of quarantine and back to school. But this is a ton of stories. It's probably like 1,000 digital books, and you can have them read to you. You can highlight text. You can click on the words. It's just a fantastic source. If you have Amazon Prime, there are free books on Amazon Prime. If you go into where the Kindle is, you can find out all the children's books that are available. And the reason I love this is that I can bring the book up on screen and I can customize the story to my students' individual needs. The Kid Lit Read Out Loud, these are books that are read out loud by different people. Storyline.net is my ultimate favorite. These are actors that pick their favorite story to read, and they read the entire book in different characters' voices. And the Magic Tree House, there are a ton of books on the Magic Tree House. So this talks about science and history, writing and reading. So the Magic Tree House is a fantastic source to go to for literacy. And you can also go to Don Johnston now has some free books that you can go to and have their leveled readers. So let's talk about writing online. These are going to be resources that have ways to manipulate text online, right? So there'll be websites that you can write poetry and they'll have visual mapping tools, because there's different stages of writing. And it just depends on what the task your child is asked to do specifically. One of my favorites is the magnetic poetry. So magnetic poetry, you literally slide words into place and then you click go and it reads your poem to you. The quill.org is also another website that allows you to write text online, and it can be published if you choose. The Story Kitchen allows you to actually write stories online, either independently by yourself or with a partner. And Fun English Games is just a bunch of different tools that allows you to find fun ways to do language arts. So how to check a structure of a sentence, grammar rules, but in a fun way. Math Online, believe it or not, they have some of the best resources. We have very little in the AT world as different ways to input information into the computer for math, but there are some fantastic math websites. I'm sure you've heard of IXL. A lot of school districts use it. My favorite is the virtual library and the toy theater, because these are ways that students can manipulate items on screen to complete a task. So if you're adding 2 apples plus 2 apples in the virtual library, you have 2 apples and you have 2 apples, and it'll have you count them up and add and get your answer, and it'll check your answer. On the Math Playground is just a bunch of different math tools. If you're learning algebra, it has an algebra piece. If you're adding division, you have a division piece. If you're doing math learning, this is just a ton of different ways, definitions and math skills and step-by-step videos. There's a bunch of different ways to learn math online, but the virtual math library is my ultimate favorite because it takes you through all the different levels of math. So during the show and tell, I'll actually show them to you and show you how to use them. If you have any questions, I'll be here to answer them. Thank you for coming, and I hope you found a couple of tools that will help your students and children work on those reading, writing, and math things and some organizational. If you need to reach me, this is my email. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for coming.